Oh, we're on Facebook Live, by the way.
Cool.
So, don't say anything bad about your mothers.
That's why I came.
Um, So we had a great retreat this past weekend, and just a lot of energy and just this kind of inspiration of the sense of being in love with each other and a sense of opening in consciousness. You're getting too crazy, Irene. Just
I'm just getting a little
just
closer,
relax
really
and-
far away.
it's like what's that thing, like the subtle, the movies where they have the thing in it. What's that called?
Dramatic.
I don't remember what that's
I
called.
don't know how you
Dun,
did that
dun, dun.
when you were sitting the whole time.
But a pan? Is that what it's called? A pan? You're from Hollywood. What's it called? Okay, I thought people from Hollywood knew these things. Anyway, so a lot of depth of realization that we've been sharing in, and it's really amazing. It feels like really special, like something really special is opening amidst us, in between us, and it's just a chance to share it further this evening. And I feel like it doesn't necessarily matter if you, the sense of what you've experienced before or what has happened before this point, like, oh, I was at the retreat or I wasn't at the retreat. Like, I don't think that necessarily really matters. What really matters and what we're discovering that matters the most is just being present right now. Just being present right now. Because this is where everything is happening. This is where it's all happening. And there's nothing that's not happening right now. And it's like such a simple realization, and yet it like changes everything. You know, it totally changes profoundly changes your entire life and the way that where you're living from, where you're operating from, or where you're moving from. So it always feels to me like the first and most important thing, the first thing and really the last thing and the middle thing is really to be present, to really be present, really be here together now. And this is where the magic and the miracles arise, you know, when we're really present. And we were just saying, is this where the magic and the miracles arise, or is life itself a magic and miraculous, and we're just now available and present to notice, right? And what we were saying also is either way, it doesn't really matter. Because either way, we're in the magic, you know? And it's this space of being available to this moment. Being available for life to move through us in this moment now. And this phrase that I've been loving sharing is that God, which we define as the universal creative intelligence, is always available. And the only question is, are you available? That's the question to like really explore. Are you available? Like there's all this inherent sense of magic and miraculousness and wonderment that's available and present in the moment. It's like an infinite amount. Like it's really like essentially overwhelming to the nervous system. Like all the level of magic and miraculous and wonderment that's available now. And are we available now? Or are we thinking about somebody that we want to get back at from the past, or somebody who we want to get revenge upon, or our own personal burdens from the past, or anxiety about the future, or what could happen, or what might happen? And we start to get some kind of clarity and start to look at that, and there's a sense of like, and I actually heard someone say this today, it was actually your son said this today. He's like, well, why am I wasting? That's a waste of energy. Like, why am I wasting my energy with that? When you really see it, look at it clearly, there's a sense of like, why am I wasting my energy thinking about things in the past, holding on to things, the burdens, the resistances? Why am I thinking about anxieties from the future? Why when you see clearly, what I was saying the other day too is it's like you think of that some of these patterns, these unconscious patterns, like a rattlesnake in the field, in the grass, and it's like if you don't know what it does, then you poke it, you try to play with it, you step on it, whatever, and you get bit, you get stuck, you get snake bitten. But if you can see really clearly, oh, that's that pattern, that's a little pattern, that's rattlesnake. Here's what it does, how it operates. Then you just let it go. Just keep walking. So much of what we delving into is seeing clearly, but the foundation of seeing clearly is being present. So we're exploring being present on then two levels. Being present in the role of sensory perception. So being present with what we see, being present with what we hear, being present with what we feel, sense of touch, etc. Smell, taste, so forth. And then also, so that's the physical sensory perception realm. Also being aware of our thoughts, and the thoughts is it's like a thought stream. It's like a river of consciousness. So just watching the river roll. John Lennon, who was a very awakened being, wrote a song where he said, I'm just watching the wheels go round and round. I really love to watch them roll. So that's an interesting line right there. He doesn't say oh, I have to get away from them, or I have to avoid them, or I need to stop them, or I need to put a brake inside them. He just says, I really love to watch them roll. And then it says, I'm no longer riding on the merry-go-round. I just had to let it go. So it's that sense of you can watch your mind, you can watch it, moving and turning, but you're not on the merry-go-round anymore. You're just watching the wheels go round and round. And the images are constantly changing, continually changing. You might not be good, you're a crier. You might not be good to hold the camera. You're doing good so far. So you can watch the wheels turning in these different images. The images are moving and changing. And what is the image of? The image is of all of the same essence, which we could say is God, the infinite. Right. So the thoughts are continually moving. The images are continually moving. The emotional energy is continually moving. What else is continually moving? Everything is continually moving. Everything that's a thing. So we discovered that everything that's a thing is continually moving. So everything that's a thing means anything that has a form, has a shape, is continually moving, is constantly changing, is ever changing. So what has a thing? What has a what has a shape and a form? Everything has a shape and a form. So everything is constantly, continually changing. So then we explore this question of what is it that's unchanging? Because I want to find some sense of like, some kind of like security or some sense of like grounding or some sense of permanency. So how do I discover that which is unchanging? Is there anything that's unchanging? So then what we've discovered is there is nothing that is unchanging. So that seems like a really like simple statement until you start to go like deeper into it. So you're like, wait a second, let's slow that sentence down. There is nothing that is unchanging. That means that there is an awareness I can bring to an element that's unchanging, which is nothing. Nothing is Dogs are continually barking. Thoughts are continually changing. Lights are going on and off. Like everything is changing. People are moving. People are laughing. People are crying. Everything is changing. But what is it that is unchanging? So the amazing thing we discover is that the most important essential foundation of this, of ourselves, of who we really are in the universe, that we've overlooked our whole life, is no thing. No thingness. And to realize no thingness is to realize that which is unchanging. Nothing is that. Nothing is changing. Nothing is unchanging. Nothing is unchanging. Everything is changing. Nothing is unchanging. So you can start to feel this like experientially now in the space. And what's important is like really important to emphasize is this is not like an intellectual exercise. This is not like a theoretical ideas to think about or toss around. But you can actually feel experientially. You can feel the words. You can feel the ideas. You can feel the movement of words and ideas. And you can feel something that's unchanging right now, which is the space between the words. And to realize this nothingness, this vastness, this emptiness, this infinite space, this nothingness has no borders, has no boundaries, has no shape, has no form. So to realize this infinite space, and to realize this is the essence of who we are, is to realize the infinite freedom. To realize the depth of peace that's ever present, no matter what's happening or not happening, no matter what's rising or falling, no matter what the conditions are, what the experience is. It's to realize the deepest depth of unconditional love, because in this space, there's no separation. Because there's no thing else. There's no things. Things are separate. When you have things, you have separation. But in this space, there's no thing else. And the essence of who I am, this infinite space, this infinite essence, is the same essence as who you are. So now we recognize this deepest sense of love by just realizing the truth, that everything is of the same essence, this vast, infinite essence. So I'm of that essence, you're of that essence, you're of that essence, you are that essence, you are that essence. The trees are the same essence, the river, the sky, the clouds, everything is the same essence. So we recognize this, and we recognize the depth of being in love with all that is. Which is the great, now comes with the great paradox, which is when we realize ourselves as nothing, then we also realize ourselves as everything. And then we say, everything is nothing, nothing is everything, but not as an idea or a concept. And so to recognize this and realize this is to be free now, is to be in love now, is to be in the deepest depth of peace now, to be empowered, meaning you're not looking for anything outside of yourself, because there is nothing outside of yourself now. So it's recognizing, realizing that it's all here now. And there's nowhere else that there needs to be, we need to be, nothing else needs to happen, so else we need to go. So it's like this merry-go-round is moving and changing. In Buddhism they call it the wheel of samsara. But we're not on that wheel. There's a line, Henry Miller has a title of a book called Stand Still Like the Hummingbird. So it was like recognizing this stillness, this essence of who we are, the consciousness. And where before we're like chasing things, because we think that we're caught in the egoic story, the egoic consciousness, the illusionary sense of separation. So the separate self chasing other separate things. Now we recognize ourselves as the space, and it's just like things are just sort of moving in and out of the space. I use the example sometimes of a bathtub. It's like this big giant, huge bathtub, and like the bubbles, little soap bubbles are like popping in and out, you know? And the soap bubbles are like thought forms, you know? They could even be like universes, you know, popping in and out. We recognize ourselves as the space that the bubbles are popping in and out of. And the more we recognize it, the bigger the space becomes. You know, till it's mostly all space. And there's little bubbles which actually are space also. You know. And this is like essentially scientifically proven, right? It seems like there's all this dense matter, then the scientists go in and it's like 99.9% space, right? And they go into that, and that's 99.9% space, you know? So it's on a, that's true on the level of the sky. The sky is 99.9% space, and then these stars are just, and planets are just this tiny. And then on the molecular level as well, on the microscopic level, same thing on the atomic level. So the most essential element is the one that's easiest to overlook, which is the space. And then we're kind of bringing our imagination to the space, like a movie screen. and overlooking the ground of being, which everything's arising and falling back into. And then I recognize myself as the space, I recognize you as the space, then there's the realization of time and space as being what we could say illusionary. So it seems like there's separation, it seems like you're over there and over here, but it's actually not the case. We're realizing that you're so close to me, actually I can't even if I reach out, I'm like reaching too far. Meister Eckhart has this great line: God is closer to me than I am to myself. God is closer to me than I am to myself. That's really close. And I'll share my favorite Rumi poem again tonight. I can't say it enough. One of my favorites. There's a lot of favorites of him, but I've been dancing on the lip of insanity, wanting to know reasons, knocking on a door. It opens, and knocking. It opens. I've been knocking from the inside. So let's just take a minute or two, and Facebook people can do this too. Take a minute or two and just be in a space of presence together. Just be present, just be, notice what's here, really allowing ourselves to be here fully, deeply together, letting go of whatever's come before this moment, letting go of any kind of issues getting here, having any issues parking, or finding the space, or work, or family. Just opening the space to really be here together now, and just taking a couple of minutes of silent time together. Pay attention to the breath, and just allowing whatever magic and miracles want to arise. To be a clear, open channel for that which wants to move through us, this evening. From a relaxed space of presence. There's no right way or wrong way, good way or bad way, positive way or negative way. There's just the way, and we're an open, clear channel for that intelligence to move through us just by being present here together and allowing the electromagnetic frequency of our hearts to attune with each other, recognizing and realizing in this attunement we're exponentially more powerful and unified, in the unified resonant field than we are as the perception of being alone.
like a raccoon or something on the road.
You're ready? You can open your eyes. Imagine a raccoon. Open your eyes with fresh, innocent eyes if you're seeing life for the first time. And just take a few moments to look around the space. In silence, notice if things look more alive, vibrant, colorful, present, here, now. And there's just this feeling in this space of being. The being is enough. When you start to rest into the being is enough. And that the being is more than enough. And that for our physiologically, we've been discussing the evolution of the physiology of the nervous system, kind of hold the energy that wants to flow through. So you could say this sense of being is almost overwhelmingly enough. So, if anyone would like to share any comments or questions, feel free.
Would you want to talk a little bit about like the absolute and relative?
Oh, yeah.
That topic, Darian and I had a discussion a little bit earlier
Yeah.
about it.
A little bit.
Darian's getting really good with it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, the relative is the world of relative is everything that's changing. So relative is like relationship. So anything that relates to anything else, which you also say is the world of duality, the world of two, is the relative world, and that's also where time and space is created. So you have to have two things to have time and space. Otherwise, there's no time and no space. Really interesting, right? Because if you don't have two things, there's no space between the things, and there's no time to get there. So that's the relative world, and then there's like relative truth, which we can actually explore that deeper tonight too, because we didn't get there yet. But is relative truth really true? Relatively. And then there's the absolute, and the absolute is that which is unchanging. The absolute doesn't relate to anything. Nothing relates to nothing. And it transcends time and space, and it's ever present. And that's the absolute truth, and that's the absolute essence of who you are.
Thank you.
Yeah. So to start to notice that, the absolute and the relative is, it's huge.
I have a question, Ryan.
Yes, Irene.
Could you distinguish for me the difference, if there is any, between the space that we talk about in time and space within the relative versus the space that we call ourselves in the absolute?
Seems to me they're the same space, unless I'm misunderstanding, but to me it's the same. Space is space.
Well, in the relative, we say time and space don't exist. It's only a construct. So the space that we're talking about in the relative is not the same space we're talking about in the absolute.
In the relative, we say time and space don't exist.
I've heard that a million times. I don't know.
Not in the relative. Relative is where time and space do exist. The absolute.
I'm sorry, that's what I meant to say. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. They only exist in the relative.
Mm-hmm.
So being that so it's like the same space.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and the other thing too that we've been talking a lot about is the integration of the absolute and the relative. Right? So the relative is not something you need to get rid of or avoid or make go away or it's bad or it's not even illusion in the sense of like illusion can mean like has a negative connotation. But it doesn't have a negative connotation or a positive connotation. It just is what it is. It's like Tristan was saying, whatever's happening, that's what's happening. Mm-hmm. You know? We talked about it, Tim and I talked about it, yeah. So, in the relative world, it's like there's a noticing of what's happening, the perception of that, and then when you just can be with that, right? We were saying the other day, when you don't, there's no reason to disagree with it, then that's when that sense of flow can come. So the world of form, the world of time and space, there's that sense of flow, without resistance, without restriction, without the ego trying to control or manipulate or whatever else the ego does. And within that sense of flow, there's the sense of the stillness, the paradox of the two as one. Yes.
Another question. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
So I know at the retreat we kind of all had ideas of how we personally could integrate the two, you know, where we would still be present with that oneness, but still, you know, play along with the stories of our lives, basically, you know. Are there like any, you know, I don't want to say like standard ways, but like, what are the best ways to like, I know it probably changes per person for each person, but are there like a few ways that everyone could, you know, integrate those two that like are a surefire way of like, you know, if you practice it, it will become easier over time? Like I feel like Eckhart kind of talks about, you know, like the basics of like non-attachment, non-resistance, you know, those sorts of things. Are there like a few things to keep in mind that would help us like just keep it integrated?
Integrating the relative and the absolute.
Yeah, and like the best way.
It's an interesting. It's a really interesting question because what I'm always interested is I'm interested in like what's the truth.
Yeah. You know,
and like I find like that because that's really because other people ask me like what's satsang. Well, satsang, the definition of what satsang is rooted in is being with being company of people interested in the truth, essentially, right? So like, what is the truth? We want to like know the truth. We want to give like everything we have, like all of our sincerity, to discovering what the truth is. And so, the truth that I see is that there is no difference between absolute and relative. So this is where it gets interesting. Like any kind of steps or any kind of like practice or any kind of strategy to try to like integrate the two means that on some level you think that they're not the same. Right. You know? So it actually perpetuates.
I walked right into that trap.
Well, that's a great question. That's a great question, actually, because that's what we do.
Yeah.
It perpetuates the illusion. This other like really amazing thing happened some years ago to me. It's different, but it's the same principle.
Mhm.
So this was a workshop of some kind, or some kind of salon, or some kind of thing where I was with people, and it's about relationships, and it's about like how to feel connected, or how to feel a sense of like unity, you know. So we were broken up into these small groups, and I'm with like a few other people. We're at this table, like around this table, and we're exploring this, this question. And I was like, how do we bridge the gap? How do we bridge the gap between us? How do we bridge it? And like really thinking hard about it, and they're thinking about it, and we're like talking and inquiring, and then something like hit me, and just like, poof, just like, mind blown, mind blown, mind blown, mind blown, mind blown, mind blown. And I say, guys, I just realized something. I had to tell you this. And they're like, what? What is it? And I'm like, I just realized there is no gap. There is no gap between us. And in that moment, it was like something just opened, and like we were all in it together. We're all like, it's just such a funny like paradox of like that's always the truth, but when you realize the truth in group together, which is what we're intending to do, then it's then it's like, oh, we're in it. We realize it. So it's like there is no gap, and actually trying to create a bridge is actually perpetuating the illusion of a gap. But there actually is no gap. And they're like, wow, And then, yeah, so there's a feeling of it. And I think it's the same with the relative and the absolute. There actually is no gap between the two. It's the same thing. The gap between, the sense of gap between the two would be that sense of duality. And what we're opening to is the non-dual awakening, realization. What do you have to say, Darian?
That helps. The no gap.
Mm-hmm.
Today, pretty much all day was like steadily feeling both of them at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
and being blissed out at work, but also working and being here and trying to be present, working, and it makes sense because they were the same. Well, not they weren't the same, but there was like no gap between the two. I was just doing both of them at the same time versus them being two separate things.
You could stop it.
I still have 20% battery. Just saying.
Oh, what were you saying to me?
Just low battery.
Oh.
It's okay though.
Okay, well, you can stop it when it gets low. Hi everyone on Facebook. When the battery gets low, you're gonna have to go away. But we really appreciate you being with us. So, okay, yeah. So I think this is really